Home-based PCB assembly, the essential guide, Now. Are you looking to take your electronic projects to the next level? Are you curious about the world of PCB assembly but don't know where to start? Well, you've come to the right place. This guide will give you all the essential information you need to know about home-based PCB assembly. What is home-based PCB assembly? Home-based PCB assembly is the process of creating printed circuit boards, PCBs, from components at home. It involves soldering the components to the PCB in order to create a functioning circuit board. Home-based PCB assembly has become increasingly popular with hobbyists, professionals, and businesses alike, who are looking to create their own custom PCBs. The first step in the home-based PCB assembly process is to create a design for the circuit board. This involves using computer-aided design, CAD, software to design the PCB layout and component placement. Once the design is complete, the components are then sourced and acquired. After that, the components are then soldered onto the PCB in the correct positions. Benefits of home-based PCB assembly. There are many benefits to home-based PCB assembly. One of the biggest benefits is the cost savings. Home-based PCB assembly tools and supplies. By doing the assembly yourself, you can save money on expensive prototyping costs and reduce the time to market for your product. Home-based PCB assembly tools and supplies. One of the most important aspects of successful home-based PCB assembly is having the right tools and supplies. The most common tools used in PCB assembly are soldering irons, solder, desoldering wicks, and flux. Home-based PCB assembly process. Once you have all the necessary tools and supplies, you are ready to begin the home-based PCB assembly process. The first step is to create a design for the board. This involves using a CAD program to create the layout and component placement of the board. Once the design is complete, the components are then sourced and acquired. The next step is to prepare the PCB for assembly. This involves cleaning the board, applying solder paste to the pads, and placing the components. Once the components are in place, the solder is then applied to the pads and the components are soldered into place. The final step is to test the board. This involves connecting the board to a power source and testing the circuit to ensure that it is functioning correctly. If there are any errors, then they will need to be corrected before the board is ready to use. Tips for successful home-based PCB assembly. There are a few tips to keep in mind in order to ensure successful home-based PCB assembly. The first tip is to make sure to follow the manufacturer's instructions for each component. This will ensure that the components are placed correctly and soldered correctly. The second tip is to use the right tools for the job. Using the wrong tools can lead to a faulty board or even damage to the components. Make sure to use quality tools and supplies that are designed for PCB assembly. Finally, it is important to stay organized. Make sure to label all the components and keep track of where they are placed on the board. This will save you time in the long run and make the assembly process much easier. Troubleshooting for home-based PCB assembly. When assembling a PCB, there can be a number of issues that arise. In order to troubleshoot these issues, it is important to be familiar with the symptoms and causes of the problems. Common issues include short circuits, cold solder joints, and incorrect component placement. Courses for home-based PCB assembly. If you are looking to learn more about home-based PCB assembly, there are a number of courses available. These courses cover all aspects of PCB assembly, from design to testing. The courses are typically structured around modules that cover the basics of PCB assembly, such as soldering techniques and component placement. The courses are typically online and self-paced, so you can learn at your own pace. Most courses also come with support from instructors and access to discussion forums. This allows you to ask questions and get help from experienced PCB assemblers. Services for home-based PCB assembly. If you don't have the time or resources to do the assembly yourself, there are services available that can do the assembly for you. These services provide professional PCB assembly services and can create custom boards tailored to your specifications. The services typically use high-quality components and adhere to industry standards. This ensures that your boards are built to the highest quality standards. The services also provide testing and debugging services to ensure that the board is functioning correctly. Final thoughts on home-based PCB assembly. Home-based PCB assembly is an exciting and rewarding hobby that can be used to create custom boards tailored to your specific needs. It is important to have the right tools and supplies, as well as a good understanding of the assembly process. With a bit of practice, anyone can become an expert in home-based PCB assembly. Conclusion. In conclusion, home-based PCB assembly is an exciting and rewarding hobby that can be used to create custom boards tailored to your specific needs. With the right tools and supplies, you can create your own PCBs and take your electronic projects to the next level. So what are you waiting for? Get started with home-based PCB assembly today. Visit our website, WinOw PCBA.